Most money decisions in retirement, you can frankly walk back if you get them wrong. Think about it. You can change your mind on a mutual fund. You can turn a Roth conversion up or down next year. You can spend a little less if the market scares you. This is not one of those decisions. If you have a pension or a cash balance plan, there is a single election form that you sign around the time you retire. And this form will ask you one question: how do you want your checks paid out? And the answer is locked for the rest of your life, and in most cases, the rest of your spouse's life too. There is no undo button here, my friends. There is no do-over next year. You pick it one time. So here's what I watch happen at the table. A careful, very sensible person, someone who read everything there is about their retirement plan. Well, they look at the options and they see the one that pays them the biggest monthly check and decide that that's the best option. And it's the natural move. A bigger number means more money. Why would we take less? But let me lay out the choices plainly, because the election form makes them sound more complicated than they actually are. So you've usually got, we'll call them 3 doors to choose from. The first door is single life. This pays you the biggest monthly check, but stops the day you die. The second door is joint and survivor. It's a smaller check that keeps going to your spouse after you are gone. And in lots of plans, there's a third door, which is a lump sum, where you take the whole value as a rollover and then you manage it yourself. So you'll have those 3 doors. There's only one signature, and then that door closes behind you. So the real work isn't picking the biggest number. It's actually figuring out which one protects the two of you across both of your lifetimes, including the years after one of you is gone. So the villain here isn't the pension itself. A pension is a wonderful thing to have. The villain is an instinct, and that is to take the biggest number, because it's colliding with a fact that nobody emphasizes to you at the signing table. And that is that this is a permanent decision. So here's how the 3 doors really work. So single life, again, it pays you the most every month, but it is a bet on your own life, meaning the check exists only as long as you do. So the day you die, whether that is in 20 years or in 2 years, it stops cold. And if your spouse was counting on that income, too bad, it is gone. Then joint and survivor, again, pays less each month on purpose. Usually it is written as some type of a percentage. So a 100% survivor option keeps the full check going to your spouse after you die. A 75% option keeps 3/4, and like a 50% option keeps half. The more protection you want, the smaller the check while you are both alive. So that reduction, if you will, is the price of that guarantee. And then the lump sum, that hands you the entire value to roll it into an IRA. So now you control it, you get to invest it, you get to decide what comes out and when. So you have much more flexibility. But you also have more responsibility and, of course, the risk that you manage it poorly or that the market treats you badly at the wrong time. Now, why does the biggest check number trip up so many good people? I think there's 2 reasons. The numbers are shown to you in the worst possible order. The single life figure is the largest one on the page, so it naturally jumps out. And then the survivor options, well, they all look like a pay cut next to it. So naturally, people will anchor to the big number and treat every other choice as like losing money, when in actuality, those survivor options are buying you something with that difference. But it's the second reason that does the real damage. Couples make this decision imagining that they both live a long time. And that's not how it usually goes, unfortunately. One of you will likely outlive the other by years, sometimes by a decade or more. Statistically, if there is a wife in the picture, she often outlives her husband. So the single life check gets chosen by the healthier feeling spouse, and then the person most likely to be sitting alone at the end is the one it protects the least. So that is the trap. It's a permanent decision made for the future where nobody dies early. And of course, it's signed by the person least likely to be the survivor. So let me show you a real couple facing this. Nathan is 60, a CRNA with a hospital pension election coming up when he retires. Now, his plan also offers a lump sum rollover option, so all three of those doors are open. His spouse, Simone, is 58. She worked too, but in lower paying roles with time out to raise their kids. So her own Social Security benefit is much smaller than Nathan's. Now, Nathan is leaning for the single life option, and I understand why. The single life check is about $1,200 a month more than the joint and survivor option. And to him, that difference reads as money the plan is trying to keep from him. And he feels fine day to day. But here's what that feeling leaves out. Nathan has had high blood pressure for years. Yes, it's managed, but it is there. And Simone is 2 years younger than him. The women in her family live into their 90s, and she's likely to outlive him by a good stretch. So run the future that's actually most probable for them. Nathan will die first, maybe well first. And the day that happens, if he took the single life option, the pension check stops, all of it. So Simone is left with her own small Social Security. Yes, she gets a survivor bump from Nathan's, and then whatever left is in savings. The largest, steadiest source of income in their retirement disappears the moment she's most alone. So she could go from a comfortable income to something that doesn't cover the life that they have built. So I told Nathan what I will tell you. There's nothing wrong wanting the bigger check. But a pension election isn't really a question about your life. It's more a question about the second life, the one that keeps going after the first one ends. And that's the life this election form is deciding for. So the misconception is that the biggest monthly number is the best deal. Now, sometimes it is, but biggest check and best decision are two different questions. And that election form only shows you the first one. But once you see it that way, you stop asking, how do I get the most per month? And then you start asking, what does the survivor actually keep? And what is the smallest amount that I have to give up now to make sure that they are okay? That's a different calculation. And for Nathan and Simone, it changed the answer. What I walked them through, I call the survivor first pension choice. It's the idea that's right there in the name. You don't start with the biggest check and then work backwards. Instead, you start with the survivor and you decide what income the person left behind needs to be okay, and then you pick the option that guarantees it at the lowest cost while you are both alive. So the shift is from which door pays me the most to which door still pays me when one of us is gone. So it's the same pension, but it's a completely different way of reading the election form. And honestly, it turns a decision people make on instinct into one that they make now on purpose. So here's how it works in 3 separate moves. Move number 1, you want to start with the survivor's number, not the biggest check. Again, before we looked at single pension option, we figured out what Simone would need if Nathan died first. So we looked at their fixed costs and what her own Social Security and survivor benefit would cover. And then the gap between the two is the number that now matters, because that's the income that the pension has to protect. And for them, that gap was large because remember, her Social Security is a small number, which meant a single life check, the one that vanishes when he dies, would leave her badly short. So starting from her number instead of his biggest number made the single life the risky choice, not the smart one. Move number 2, run pension max honestly and then only take it if the math wins. So there's a strategy people bring up here called pension max. What that means is you take the bigger single life check and then you use that extra money to buy a life insurance policy on yourself so that if you do die first, well, the payout from the insurance policy replaces the pension for your spouse. So that way you get the big check and you get the protection. And it definitely can work, but only when the numbers line up. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't. So for them, we ran it straight through. That extra $1,200 a month minus what a permanent life policy big enough to protect Simone would cost, again, at Nathan's age with his blood pressure history. And what we found out was that the honest answer, the insurance ate up most of the difference. And the life policy had to perform for 30 plus years without a hitch to come out ahead mathematically. So Joint and Survivor instead gave Simone that same protection with none of that risk because it was guaranteed by the pension itself. So for them, pension max was not the right decision. But it doesn't always have to be that way. For a younger, healthier person with a cheap life policy and maybe a big gap between single life and survivor checks, well, then pension max can genuinely beat joint and survivor option and leave the family better off. And that is the trade-off. It just has to win on paper before you go ahead and bet a spouse's income on it. And then on to move number 3. We weigh the lump sum for the flexibility it opens before you decide. So again, Nathan had that third door, the lump sum rollover, and we didn't want to skip it. Rolling the pension into an IRA would give them control. And obviously they could invest it, they could pull from it flexibly, or they could leave whatever's left to their kids instead of it dying with the last check like a pension would. It also would open a Roth conversion runway in their low income years, which of course the pension income does not allow for. So the cost is that the guarantee goes away. I mean, a pension is a paycheck for life that does not care what the market does. But if you take the lump sum, well, that certainty is now your job to manage. So for a couple who want a very steady, protected income, and they just don't want to have to babysit a portfolio, well then the joint and survivor pension option was the much calmer fit. But again, for a different couple, more comfortable investing, wanting that flexibility and maybe leaving a legacy, well then the lump sum can be the right option. But for these guys, it came in second, but close enough definitely for us to deserve the look. So here's where they landed. They chose a 75% joint and survivor option. So a check about $1,200 a month lighter than single life while they're both here and alive, but they still have one that keeps 3/4 of itself flowing to Simone for her life if Nathan dies first. Now, again, it's not the biggest number on the election form, but it's the number that still shows up when she needs it most. Now, the honest trade off. Choosing a survivor protection costs them real money every month for as long as they are both alive. And so if Nathan outlives Simone, well, they will have paid for a guarantee that they never collected on. So that is a genuine cost, and single life bettors who both stay healthy will have been right to take the bigger check. So I won't pretend that away, but I think paying a known amount now to make sure that the survivor isn't left short is honestly, for most couples with an income gap like theirs was, definitely worth it. I mean, you are buying certainty for the person who can least afford a surprise. Now, one more thing, and it matters. A pension survivor election is in most plans locked once payments begin. Yes, some plans allow limited changes before your payments start, or there's also a pop-up that raises your check back if your spouse dies first. Now, those provisions vary a lot, so confirm exactly what your plan allows in writing before you count on any of it. But I would assume your decision is permanent until your plan tells you otherwise. So if you've got a pension or a cash balance election coming in the future, don't let the biggest number on the election form make the decision for you. Yes, it might be the right one, and for plenty of single people or couples where both have very strong incomes, single life or even the lump sum is exactly the right choice. But that's an answer that you want to reach on purpose after you have looked at the survivor's number, not because the big check was instead printed at the top of the page on the election form. And at Oak Capital Advisors, this is the kind of decision we think through with the client community we work with. Your health, your spouse's health, your other income, what your plan actually allows. Not a quick number, but a real conversation. Because again, there is no undo button on this one. If you're near retirement with $500,000 or more saved, mostly pre-tax, and you've got an election like this coming, book a call with me at connectwithbrett.com. We will talk it through and see whether working together is a fit before you sign anything that you can't take back. So Nathan walked in ready to take the biggest check the way that most people do. But he walked out choosing a smaller one on purpose because we started with Simone instead of the number. Again, the pension is a gift, but the election form is just a fork in the road with no way back. And the whole job is making sure that that road you pick still has someone on it after one of you is gone.